Hello. Hope everybody's doing great. Welcome to week 16. Yeah, week 16 of biblical interpretations. Thanks for coming. As is tradition. So my name is James. I'm a husband and a father, and I own an automotive business. I have a degree in biblical and theological studies and ancient Near Eastern history, although I'm not an expert in anything. We started this class back in October to discuss a specific epistemological and hermeneutic framework I've developed kind of in my head over 20 years. And we spent the first 8 weeks of this class building a foundational paradigm so that I could say the following sentence and hope that it makes sense. So the revelation of God is inherently contradictory. The biblical text describes a God defined beyond all human knowledge that also wants to be known by humanity. The moment the knowledge of God transcends the boundary between what is not known to what is known, that God no longer is transcendent, but rather continuous and becomes defined by what is known. And so this is the fundamental concern of the biblical text, is how humanity can know God without God being entirely defined by all that is known. This is the fundamental issue we are seeking an answer to, at least trying to. Another way to think of it is how God can be known as this without becoming known as something like this. And so last week, we began finally the story of Joseph. And we see our completed map thus far. And we read part of Genesis 36 in the summation of Esau and the origin of the Edomites. We read all of Genesis 37 in the gap developing between the teams of Jacob versus his sons. I proposed a possible hermeneutic where we see a thread developing after the rape of Dinah in Genesis 34. The sons of Jacob start to have a division with their father and Joseph. And we see this dance in Genesis 37, where Reuben and Judah seem to propose different solutions to saving Joseph from the hands of each other. We see passivity in their leadership and a deprioritization of their patriarchal duty to protect each other. In the end, Joseph is brought to Egypt. The family is divided and in ruins, spread between Canaan and Egypt. And again, for a story where the goal is to be in Canaan, nothing seems to be working. We then see this bizarre story in Genesis 38, where the story of Joseph is interrupted to tell the story about Judah and Tamar. We see Judah assimilate with the Canaanites. He seemingly does not return home to the Negev to be with Jacob. I propose this story might be intermingled into the story of Joseph because it could be trying to describe the process that changes Judah and leads to his redemption in the plot of the story. But so far on our journey, this story of Judah has not been concluded. It's left on pause as we proceeded to Genesis 39, which opens with Joseph in Egypt. But we skipped Genesis 39 and 40 simply for the sake of time, and we read Genesis 41. And we see Joseph assimilate to become Egyptian, like with Judah assimilating into the Canaanites. They both seem to want to forget their father Jacob's household, and frankly, I don't blame them one bit. Joseph rises to the second in command of Egypt, sovereign over everything except for Pharaoh himself. He has two sons, one named To Forget, seemingly speaking to his desire to forget Canaan and his father's household, and the other son he names To Be Fruitful, seeming to point out how much better Egypt is for his life. We see how Joseph's story began with a tunic given to him by his sovereign patriarchal father Jacob, and we see this section of Genesis end with a tunic given to Joseph by the ultimate sovereign patriarch Pharaoh. We then ended last week with the end of Genesis 41, where we see the entire world in famine, Egypt included. And Pharaoh says, "Go to Joseph, what he says do." And Joseph provides bread to the world. And so Joseph is in Egypt. And so we continue our journey now in Genesis 42. When Jacob learned that there was grain for sale in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you look at one another?" And he said, "Behold, I have heard that there is grain for sale in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with his brothers, for he feared that harm might happen to him. Thus the sons of Israel came to buy among the others who came, for the famine in the land of for the famine was in the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was governor over the land. He was the one who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground. Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he treated them like strangers and spoke roughly to them. "Where do you come from?" he said. They said, "From the land of Canaan, to buy food." And Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. And Joseph remembered the dreams that he had dreamed of them, and he said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land." They said to him, "No, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants have never been spies." He said to them, "No, it is the nakedness of the land that you have come to see." And they said, "We, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is no more." But Joseph said to them, "It is as I said to you, you are spies. By this you shall be tested. By the life of Pharaoh, you shall not go from this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you and let him bring your brother, while you remain confined, that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh, surely you are spies." And he put them all together in custody for 3 days. And on the third day Joseph said to them, "Do this, and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers remain confined where you are in custody, and let the rest go and carry grain for the famine of your households. And bring your youngest brother to me, so your words will be verified, and you shall not die." And they did so. Then they said to one another, "In truth, we are guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the distress of his soul when he begged us, and we did not listen. That is why this distress has come upon us." And again Reuben answered them, "Did I not tell you not to sin against the boy? But you did not listen. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood." They did not know that Joseph understood them, for there was an interpreter between them. Then he turned away from them and wept. And he returned to them and spoke to them. And he took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. And Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain, and to replace every man's money in his sack, and to give them provisions for the journey. This was done for them. Then they loaded their donkeys and their grain and departed. And as one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at the lodging place, he saw his money in the mouth of his sack. And he said to his brothers, "My money has been put back. Here it is in the mouth of my sack." At this their hearts failed them, and they turned trembling to one another, saying, "What is this that God has done to us?" When they came to Jacob, their father in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them, saying, the Lord of the land, spoke roughly to us, and took us to be spies of the land. But we said to him, "We are honest men. We have never been spies. We are 12 brothers, son of our father, one is no more, and the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan." Then the man, the lord of the land, said to us, by this I shall know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me, and take grain for the famine of your households, and go your way. Bring your youngest brother to me, then I shall know that you are not spies but honest men, and I will deliver your brother to you, and you shall trade in the land. As they emptied their sacks, behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. And when they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. And Jacob their father said to them, you have bereaved me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more. And now you would take Benjamin. All this has come against me. Then Reuben said to his father, kill my two sons if I do not bring him back to you. Put him in my hands, and I will bring him back to you. But he said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is the only one left. If harm should happen to him on the journey that you are to make, you would bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol. Okay. So the fifth generation now leaves the land of Canaan and heads to Egypt because of a famine. So far, I think it is safe to say all attempts at remaining in Canaan continue to fail. Again, Isaac is the only one to be born in, live in, and die in the land without ever leaving. And a huge reason for that was due to his refusal to go to Egypt when there was a famine. Joseph accuses his brothers of being spies and imprisons them. He makes them get a small taste of what they did to him. Sweet revenge. I find the contrast between verse 16 and 19 fascinating. At first, Joseph says, I'm going to imprison all of you, and you are to send one of you back to Jacob and bring me Benjamin. So Joseph puts them all in prison, and then 3 days later, he changes his mind and says, because I fear God. Because I fear God. Because he fears God, instead, he will only keep one brother in prison, while all the rest are free to go back to Jacob. And if they want to see their brother again, they will come back with Benjamin. Did Joseph contemplate complete total revenge on his brothers? He seems to consider this for 3 days before ultimately deciding to offer grace because of his fear of God. This, to me, is reflective of elsewhere in the text when we see a sovereign that could do whatever they want, but for the fear of God do not, like Abimelech in Genesis 20 and 26. But Joseph does keep Simeon. He bounds him and keeps him in prison. I wonder if Simeon, the second oldest of Jacob, was the one who dealt the harshest towards Joseph when the sons wanted to kill Joseph. Regardless, the rest of the brothers go back to Canaan, and they tell Jacob to let them go back to Egypt with Benjamin in order to receive Simeon. And Reuben, the firstborn, now tries to do what he didn't do with Joseph. He didn't convince his younger brothers to not harm Joseph, but now Reuben says to Jacob, let me take Benjamin to retrieve Simeon. And if Benjamin does not return, you may kill my sons. This is like saying, I will protect Benjamin at all costs. I will protect him with my life. I will take full responsibility for his safety. It's like making an unbreakable vow. It is an attitude Reuben should have already had towards his family as part of his patriarchal duty, being the eldest son, something until now he has failed to uphold. So we continue to Genesis 43. Now the famine was severe in the land, and when they had eaten the grain that they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, go again, buy us a little food. But Judah said to him, the man solemnly warned us, saying, you shall not see my faces unless your brother is with you. If you will send our brother with us, we will go down and buy you food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. Israel said, "Why did you treat me so badly as to tell the man that you had another brother?" They replied, "The man questioned us carefully about ourselves and our kindred, saying, 'Is your father still alive? Do you have another brother?' What we told him was an answer to these questions. Could we in any way know that he would say, 'Bring your brother down'?" And Judah said to Israel his father, "Send the boy with me, and we will arise and go, that he may live and not die, both we and you, and also our little ones. I will be a pledge for his safety. From my hand you shall require him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, then let me bear the blame forever. If we had not delayed, we would now have returned twice." Then their father Israel said to them, "If it must be so, then do this. Take some of the choice fruits of the land in your bags and carry a present down to the man, a little balm and a little honey, gum, myrrh, pistachio nuts, and almonds. Take double the money with you. Carry back with you the money that was returned in the mouth of your sacks. Perhaps it was an oversight. Take also your brother, and arise, go again to the man. May God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, and may he send back your other brother and Benjamin. And as for me, if I am bereaved of my children, I am bereaved." So the men took this present, and they took double the money with them, and Benjamin. They arose and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with them, he said to the steward of his house, "Bring the men into the house and slaughter an animal, and make ready, for the men are to dine with me at noon." The man did as Joseph told him, and brought the men to Joseph's house. And the men were afraid because they were brought to Joseph's house. And they said, "It is because of the money which was replaced in our sacks the first time that we were brought in, so that he may assault us and fall upon us to make us servants and seize our donkeys." So they went up to the steward of Joseph's house and spoke with him at the door of the house, and said, "O my lord, we came down the first time to buy food. When we came to the lodging place, we opened our sacks, and there was each man's money in the mouth of his sack, our money in full weight. So we have brought it again with us, and we have brought other money down with us to buy food. We did not know who put our money in our sacks." He replied, "Peace to you, do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has put treasure in your sacks for you. I received your money." Then he brought Simeon out to them. And when the man had brought the men into Joseph's house and given them water, they had washed their feet. And when he had given their donkeys fodder, they prepared the present for Joseph's coming at noon, for they heard that they should eat bread there. When Joseph came home, they brought into the house to him the present that they had with them, and bowed down to him on the ground. And he inquired about their welfare and said, "Is your father well? The old man of whom you spoke, is he still alive?" They said, "Your servant, our father, is well. He is still alive." And they bowed their heads and prostrated themselves. And he lifted up his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, "Is this your youngest brother, of whom you spoke to me? God be gracious to you, my son." Then Joseph hurried out, for his compassion grew warm for his brother, and he sought a place to weep. And he entered his chamber and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out, and controlling himself, he said, "Serve the food." They served him by himself and them by themselves. And the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. And they sat before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth. And the men looked at one another in amazement. Portions were taken to them from Joseph's table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. And they drank and were merry with him. And so in the end, Judah, not Reuben, is the one who convinces Jacob to release Benjamin in order to save Simeon. Judah is the one who pledges the assumption and patriarchal responsibility towards Benjamin, the very thing they did not do with Joseph. And so the brothers head to Egypt. And upon arriving, we see Joseph treat them with the same type of hospitality that was expected of a proper, just sovereign. He gives them water. They wash their feet. This is like Melchizedek, like Abraham, like Lot. It's not like Saddam. This is not like Shechem. So we continue on to Genesis 44. Then he commanded the steward of his house, fill the men's sack with food as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the mouth of his sack. And put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest, with his money for the grain. And he did as Joseph told him. As soon as the morning was light, the men were sent away with their donkeys. They had gone only a short distance from the city. Now Joseph said to his steward, Up, follow after the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, Why have you repaid evil for good? Is it not from this that my Lord drinks, and by this that he practices divination? You have done evil in doing this. When he overtook them, he spoke to them these words. They said to him, Why does my Lord speak such words as these? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. Behold, the money that we found in the mouths of our sacks we brought back to you from the land of Canaan. How then could we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? Whichever of your servants is found with it shall die, and we also will be my Lord's servants. He said, Let it be as you say. He who is found with it shall be my servant, and the rest of you shall be innocent. Then each man quickly lowered his sack to the ground, and each man opened his sack. And he searched, beginning with the eldest and ending with the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothes, and every man loaded his donkey, and they returned to the city. When Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, he was still there. They fell before him to the ground. Joseph said to them, What deed is this you have done? Do you not know that a man like me can indeed practice divination? And Judah said, What shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak? How can we clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of your servants. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we and he also, in whose hand the cup has been found. But he said, Far be it from me that I should do so. Only the man in whose hand the cup was found shall be my servant. But as for you, go up in peace to your father. Then Judah went up to him and said, O my Lord, please let your servant speak a word of my Lord's ears, and let not your anger burn against your servant, for you are like Pharaoh himself. My Lord asked his servants, saying, Have you a father or a brother? And we said to my Lord, We have a father, an old man, and a young brother, the child of his old age. His brother is dead, and he alone is left to his mother's children, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servants, Bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him. When said to my Lord, The boy cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. Then you said to your servants, Unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you shall not see my face again. When we went back to your servant, my father, we told him the words of my Lord, and when our father said, Go again, buy us a little food, we said, We cannot go down. If our youngest brother goes with us, then we will go down. For we cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Then your servant, my father, said to us, You know that my wife bore me 2 sons. One left me, and I said, Surely he has been torn to pieces, and I have never seen him since. If you take this one also from me, and harm happens to him, you will bring down my gray hairs in evil to Sheol. Now therefore, as soon as I come to your servant my father, and the boy is not with us, then, as his life is bound up in the boy's life, as soon as he sees that the boy is not with us, he will die. And your servants will bring down the gray hairs of your servant, our father, with sorrow to Sheol. For your servant became a pledge of safety for the boy to my father, saying, If I do not bring him back to you, then I shall bear the blame before my father all my life. Now therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the boy as a servant to my Lord, and let the boy go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the evil that would find my father. And so finally, we see a son do what was supposed to be done. It's not the oldest born Reuben that puts his life on the line to protect Benjamin. It's not Simeon. It's not Levi. It's Judah. Judah finally treats Benjamin the way they failed to treat Joseph. For as much as the story of Joseph is about the redemption of Joseph, it is equally a story about the redemption of Judah. And so Genesis 44 is the conclusion of Judah becoming who he was supposed to be. And the question is how does Judah go from the type of person he was in Genesis 37 when Joseph is sold into Egypt to becoming the type of person we see in Genesis 44 who will put his life and his own sons' lives on the line in order to protect his brothers and family? What causes this man to change? The theory is Genesis 38 and the story of Judah and Tamar. This might be why the story of Joseph is interrupted with the story of Tamar, as we discussed last week. And so, since the rape of Dinah in Genesis 34, the sons of Jacob begin to fall like dominoes. First Simeon and Levi, then Reuben, and then almost Judah. Now, we will actually skip forward several chapters to Genesis 49, and we read this. Then Jacob called his sons and said, "Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you what shall happen to you in days to come. Assemble and listen, O sons of Jacob, listen to Israel your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might and the firstfruits of my strength, preeminent in dignity and preeminent in power. Unstable as water, you shall not have preeminence, because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it. He went up to my couch. Simeon and Levi are brothers, weapons of violence that are their swords. Let my soul come not into their counsel. O my glory, be not joined to their company, for in their anger they killed men, and in their willfulness they hamstrung oxen. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, in their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He stooped down, he crouched as a lion and as a lioness, who dares rouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him, and to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. Binding his foal to the vine, and his donkey's colt to the choice vine, he has washed his garments in wine, and his vesture in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. And so at the end of Jacob's life, he goes to give his sons their blessings. And we see the conclusion of a story that began in Genesis 34 with the rape of Dinah. Reuben does not receive the blessing you would expect a firstborn to receive. Simeon and Levi do not receive the blessing you would expect the next in line to receive. But Judah does. Judah receives the blessing you would expect his older brothers to receive before him. At the end of Jacob's life, yeah. So now we're going to go back to Genesis 45 and proceed onwards. Then Joseph cannot control himself before all those who stood by him. He cried, "Make everyone go out from me." So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud, so that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. And Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. So Joseph said to his brothers, "Come near to me, please." And they came near. And he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh and lord of all his house and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father and say to him, Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of Egypt. Come down to me. Do not tarry. You shall dwell in the land of Goshen. You shall be near me, you and your children and your children's children and your flocks, your herds, and all that you have. There I will provide for you, for there are yet 5 years of famine to come, so that you and your household and all you have do not come to poverty. And now your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see, that it is my mouth that speaks to you. You must tell my father of all my honor in Egypt, and of all that you have seen. Hurry and bring my father down here. Then he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. And he kissed all of his brothers and wept upon them. After that his brothers talked to him. When the report was heard in Pharaoh's house, Joseph's brothers have come, it pleased Pharaoh and his servants. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, say to your brothers, do this, load your beasts and go back to the land of Canaan, and take your father and your households, and come to me, and I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you shall eat the fat off the land. And you, Joseph, are commanded to say, do this, take wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives, and bring your father and come. Have no concern for your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. The sons of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them wagons according to the command of Pharaoh, and gave them provisions for the journey. To each and all of them he gave a change of clothes, but to Benjamin he gave 300 shekels of silver and 5 changes of clothes. To his father he sent as follows: 10 donkeys loaded with the good things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain, bread, and provisions for his father on the journey. Then he sent his brothers away, and as they departed, he said to them, do not quarrel on the way. So they went up out of Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to their father Jacob, and they told him, Joseph is still alive, and he is ruler over all the land of Egypt. And his heart became numb, for he did not believe them. But when they told him all the words of Joseph which he had said to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. And Israel said, it is enough. Joseph, my son, is still alive. I will go and see him before I die. So we keep reading through Genesis 46. So Israel took his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. And God spoke to Israel in visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, here I am. And he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation. I myself will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also bring you up again, and Joseph's hand shall close your eyes. Then Jacob set out from Beersheba. The sons of Israel carried Jacob, their father, the little ones and their wives, and the wagons that Pharaoh had sent to carry him. They also took their livestock and their goods, which they had gained in the land of Canaan, and came to Egypt, Jacob and all of his offspring with him, his sons and his sons' sons with him, his daughters and his sons' daughters. All his offspring he brought with him to Egypt. Now these are the names of the descendants of Israel who came into Egypt: Jacob and his sons, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and the sons of Reuben, Hanak, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi, the sons of Simeon, Yamil, Yamin, Ohad, Yachin, Zohar, and Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman, the sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari, the sons of Judah, Onan, Shelah, Perez, and Zerah. But and Onan died in the land of Canaan, and the sons of Perez were Hezron and Hamul. The sons of Issachar, Tola, Puvah, Yab, and Shimron. The sons of Zebulun, Sarad, Elon, and Jalheel, something. These are the sons of Leah, whom she bore to Jacob in Padan Aram, together with his daughter Dinah. Altogether his sons and his daughters numbered 33. The sons of Gad, Ziphion, Haggai, Shuni, Esban, Eri, Aradi. I'm going to skip forward a bit here. Sons of Rachel, Jacob's wives, Joseph and Benjamin. And to Joseph in the land of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, the priest of On bore to him. Let's see. All the persons belonging to Jacob who came to Egypt, who were his own descendants, not including Jacob's sons, wives, were 66 persons in all. And the sons of Joseph who were born to him in Egypt were 2. All the persons of the house of Jacob who came into Egypt were 70. He had sent Judah ahead of him to Joseph to show the way before him to Goshen. And they came into the land of Goshen. And Joseph prepared his chariot and went up to meet Israel his father in Goshen. He presented himself to him and fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while. Israel said to Joseph, "Now let me die, since I have seen your face, and I know that you are still alive." Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, "I will go up and tell Pharaoh and will say to him, my brothers and my father's household who were in the land of Canaan have come to me. And the men were shepherds, for they have been keepers of livestock, and they have brought their flocks and their herds and all they have. When Pharaoh calls you and says, 'What is your occupation?' you shall say, 'Your servants have been keepers of livestock, from our youth even until now, both we and our fathers, in order that you may dwell in the land of Goshen. For every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians.'" Okay, so now I'm going to take out map number 1. And we see Joseph in the land of Goshen. And we see Jacob in the land of Canaan. And the text says that Jacob comes to Beersheba. And he offered sacrifices to the God of Isaac, who then appears to him at Beersheba and says, "I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation." Does this sound familiar? It should, because it's an exact mirror image of Genesis 28, when Jacob fled from Esau, leaving Beersheba on his way to Haran. And he arrived at Bethel, sets up an altar, and God appears and says, "I am the God of your fathers. Wherever you shall go, I will bring you back to this land as I have promised you." And so on our map number 1, look at the land of Egypt. In the north of Egypt, we see Pi, Ramses, Avaris, Tel Daba. And so we want to highlight that. And we'll also see the city of Pithom, and we want to highlight Pithom as well. See here? Yeah, it'll highlight that, and we got Pithom there. You want to highlight that too.
I don't know which map it is.
Should be this one. Map 1. Unfortunately, this is the only map that has Egypt on it. So we've got right here Pi Ramses, and then this city right here, Pithom.
Well,
So
they went right into Egypt. They went past Cairo then.
it'll be north of, so right here.
Where's Cairo?
Cairo is like there, and then here's Pithom. That's the. Yeah, you got it here. Yep, awesome. I wish we had a bigger map of Egypt, but unfortunately we don't. Okay, so highlight both the cities like this. Okay, now the lands of Goshen, in essence, are the lands between those two cities, the cities of Ramses and Pithom. And so if you want, we can draw a green circle around that region, kind of like this. Circling that area. That's the area of Goshen. That region is. You got it. Awesome. So that's Goshen. What? There's not unfortunately much room, and it's like I wish we had a full-size map of ancient Egypt, but they don't have one in this set, unfortunately. Okay, so from here, now we move on to Genesis 47. So Joseph went in and told Pharaoh, "My father and my brothers, with their flocks and herds and all that they possess, have come from the land of Canaan. They are now in the land of Goshen." And from among his brothers he took 5 men and presented them to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to his brothers, "What is your occupation?" And they said to Pharaoh, "Your servants are shepherds, as our fathers were." They said to Pharaoh, "We have come to sojourn in the land, for there is no pasture for your servants' flocks, for the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. And now, please, let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Your fathers and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and your brothers in the best of the land. Let them settle in the land of Goshen. And if you know any able men among them, put them in charge of my livestock." And Joseph brought in Jacob his father and stood him before Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Jacob, "How many are the days of the years of your life?" And Jacob said to Pharaoh, "The days of the years of my sojourning are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not attained to the days of the years of the life of my fathers and the days of their sojourning." And Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from the presence of Pharaoh. Then Joseph settled his father and his brothers and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramses, as Pharaoh had commanded. And Joseph provided his father, his brothers, and all his father's household with food, according to the number of their dependents. So now everybody is in Egypt. Nobody in this family line of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob remains in Canaan. And as it was with Abraham, so too it is with Jacob and the 12 sons of Israel. They are not in Canaan because of a famine. So we'll continue the rest of Genesis 47. Now there was no food in the land, for the famine was very severe. So the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished by reason of the famine. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan in exchange for the grain that they bought. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. And when the money was all spent in the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us food. Why should we die before your eyes? For our money is gone." And Joseph answered, "Give your livestock, and I will give you food in exchange for your livestock if your money is gone." So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them food in exchange for the horses, the flocks, the herds, and the donkeys. He supplied them with food in exchange for all their livestock that year. And when that year was ended, they came to him the following year and said to him, "We will not hide from my lord that our money is all spent. The herds of livestock are my lord's. There is nothing left in the sight of my lord but our bodies and our land. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for food, and we with our land will be servants to Pharaoh. And give us seed that we may live and not die, and that the land may not be desolate." So Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for all the Egyptians sold their fields because the famine was severe on them. The land became Pharaoh's. As for the people, he made servants of them from one end of Egypt to the other. Only the land of the priests he did not buy, for the priests had a fixed allowance from Pharaoh and lived on the allowance that Pharaoh gave them. Therefore they did not sell their land. And Joseph said to the people, "Behold, I have this day bought you and your land for Pharaoh. Now here is seed for you, and you shall sow the land. And at the harvest you shall give a fifth to Pharaoh, and 4/5 shall be your own, as seed for the field, and as food for yourselves and your households, and as food for your little ones." And they said, "You have saved our lives. May it please my lord, we will be servants to Pharaoh." So Joseph made it a statute concerning the land of Egypt, and it stands to this day that Pharaoh should have a fifth. The land of the priests alone did not become Pharaoh's. Thus Israel settled in the land of Egypt and the land of Goshen, and they gained possessions in it and were fruitful and multiplied greatly. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the days of Jacob, the years of his life, were 147 years. And when the time drew near that Israel must die, he called his son Joseph and said to him, "If now I have found favor in your sight, put your hand under my thigh and promise to deal kindly and truly with me. Do not bury me in Egypt, but let me lie with my fathers. Carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burying place." He answered, I will do as you have said. And he said, swear to me. And he swore to him. Then Israel bowed himself upon the head of his bed. And so a few thoughts in Genesis 47. So now what I'm about to say is probably not accurate, and most certainly is probably not historical. But it seems to me all of the money is spent buying food from Pharaoh. So first, the people barter livestock for food, which I want you to think about. Notice that the livestock is not considered to be food. This is a very important concept that I believe has massive hermeneutic effects on the text. To make livestock into food, you sacrifice the benefit you receive by that livestock being alive. In other words, a goat or a cow is more valuable to you alive than it is dead. I believe this is the very infant idea that becomes full-blown ideologies of animal sacrifices. To kill an animal in order to eat it, in and of itself, is a sacrifice. Perhaps every instance of an animal dying in order to be eaten is a sacrifice of life. Regardless, the people sell their livestock for food. Once they run out of livestock, they then sell their land for food. And all the land in Egypt, except that of the priests, becomes owned by Pharaoh. In exchange, the people will pay 20% tax of the harvest to Pharaoh. Now, one of the ideas I think worth pondering about is this. How harshly did Joseph treat the people of Egypt during the famine? Was he acting on his own accord, or was he acting at the request of Pharaoh? In other words, I wonder if there is some connection to the sovereign actions of Joseph towards the Egyptians during the famine that correlates to the sovereign action of Pharaoh and the Egyptians in the enslavement of the Israelites in Exodus. I wonder if there's some type of call and response or some type of action and reaction based on how Pharaoh and Joseph treat the people during the famine. It is also interesting to note, too, the word used in Genesis 47:25 for servant is ebed. And it's the same word used in Exodus 5:15 when the text says, then the foreman of the people of Israel came and cried to Pharaoh, why do you treat your servants, your ebed, like this? In other words, whatever Joseph did to the Egyptians in Genesis 47 could be the same type of slavery or servitude the Israelites experienced in Exodus. The word is the same. So the question is, what's the difference? It's Hebrew, so ebed, so like E-H-B-E-D. So the question is, what is the difference? There might be a very important difference, but that is a conversation for another time. At the end of Genesis 47, verses 29, we see Jacob do to Joseph what Abraham did to his servant in Genesis 24. And in both instances, it's a plea to return to the land of their kindred. Jacob demands Joseph bring Jacob back to Canaan, back to his fathers. Why? Because the goal is to live and die in the land you were born. Jacob needs to go back to be buried with Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, and Rebekah. So now we continue and finish Genesis 49. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel. This is what their father said to them as he blessed them, blessing each with the blessing suitable to him. And he commanded them and said to them, I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, to the east of Mamre, in the land of Canaan. When Abraham bought which Abraham bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite to possess as a burying place. There they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife. And there I buried Leah. And the field and the cave that is in it were bought from the Hittites. So Jacob finished commanding his sons. He drew up his feet into the bed and breathed his last and was gathered to his people. Then Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. 40 days were required for it, for that is how many are required for embalming. And the Egyptians wept for him 70 days. And when the days of weeping for him were past, Joseph spoke to the household of Pharaoh, saying, If now I have found favor in your eyes, please speak in the ears of Pharaoh, saying, My father made me swear, saying, I'm about to die. In my tomb that I hewed out for myself in the land of Canaan, there shall you bury me. Now therefore let me please go up and bury my father, then I will return. And Pharaoh answered, Go up and bury your father, as he made you swear. So Joseph went up to bury his father. With him went all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his household, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, as well as all the household of Joseph, his brothers, and his father's household. Only their children, their flocks, and their herds were left in the land of Goshen. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen. It was a very great company. When they came to the threshing floor at Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, they lamented there with a very great and grievous lamentation. And he made a mourning for his father 7 days. When the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning on the threshing floor of Atad, they said, This is a grievous mourning by the Egyptians. Therefore the place was named Abel Mizraim. It is beyond the Jordan. Thus his sons did for him as he had commanded them. For his sons carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah to the east of Mamre, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite to possess as a burying place. After he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt with his brothers and all who had gone up with him to bury his father. And so the fourth generation from Terah is now dead, having failed to die in Canaan. Jacob dies in Egypt, and his last final dying wish is to be buried in Canaan. So everyone heads back to Canaan to bury Jacob. Everyone except for Pharaoh and their kids, who stay in Goshen to shepherd the flocks. This is interesting. I wonder if the children and the flocks had gone with, if Joseph and the sons of Jacob would have stayed in Canaan and never returned to Egypt. And my God, that would be such a wonderful way for this beautiful story to end. But no, the kids stay in Egypt. And Joseph tells Pharaoh, in the words of Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. I wonder if Pharaoh refused to let the kids and the flock go with him in order to force them to return to Canaan. Kind of like how Joseph kept Simeon in order to force the sons to return to Egypt. So they head to Hebron, to the family burial cave in the field of Machpelah. But it's interesting because they don't take a direct route. It says, when they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, and the place becomes named Abel Mizraim. This is bizarre. This is the only spot in the entire biblical text where this word Abel Mizraim is written. Nobody is quite certain where it is, but it is beyond the Jordan, which usually is in reference to here, likely right here. This is very interesting. This would mean the caravan did not take the most direct route from Egypt into Canaan, but rather went east through the Negev, up the Trans-Jordanian Highway, then crossed into Canaan at the same spot that everybody else from Abraham, Rebekah, Jacob, and themselves when they previously came from Haran. They crossed into the land at the same spot. Then they came down the ridge route to Hebron, again tracing the same route as every instance prior. Here's a good map I found online demonstrating how far out of the way they went, roughly adding an additional 200 miles onto their journey in order to enter Canaan from the northeast instead of entering from the southwest. And so from here, we'll continue to Genesis 50. When Joseph's brother... Yep, we may talk about that a bit next week. I'm uncertain how much I want to get into Egypt, because Egypt is never ending. But there's so much there we could go over. So Genesis 50. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "It may be that Joseph will hate us and pay us back for the evil that we did to him." So they sent a message to Joseph saying, "Your father gave this command before he died. Say to Joseph, please forgive the transgression of your brother and their sin because they did evil to you. And now please forgive the transgression of the servants of the God of your father." Joseph wept when they spoke to him. His brothers also came and fell down before him and said, "Behold, we are your servants." But Joseph said to them, "Do not fear, for am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive, as they are today. So do not fear. I will provide for you and your little ones." Thus he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. So Joseph remained in Egypt, he and his father's house. Joseph lived 110 years. And Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation, and the children also of Machir the son of Manasseh were counted as Joseph's own. And Joseph said to his brothers, "I am about to die, but God will visit you and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob." Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, "God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here." So Joseph died, being 110 years old. They embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. And so we did it. We have now read and mapped nearly the entire book of Genesis. That's the end of the book. We've traced 5 generations from Terah to the sons of Israel. So if we take out our maps and you look at them, what do the maps represent? Have you noticed how little mapping we've had to do since the first 2 weeks that we started mapping? There isn't much mapping to do while reading these stories. You see how repetitive each generation is, how much doubling, tripling, quadrupling the tracing could be if we traced every instance. We would just keep tracing over the same lines we've already traced. We see how every generation experiences seemingly the same situations and the same circumstances. They go to the same places over and over and over again. They experience the same dilemmas and make the same mistakes over and over again. It's like each generation is a copy of itself. And yet there are subtle differences between each of them. Those differences distinguish them. What is the nature of the differences in the generations? Do you see how repetitive the locations of Shechem is, or Hebron, or Beersheba? What is the nature of the content being addressed? What are the concerns that come up and repeat with each generation? I see a hyper fixation on the actions of these people, on what they do, on where they walk, on what they say. I see repetitive failures of trust in the fellow man. I see failures of upholding hospitality towards one's neighbor. I see people scared for their lives, scared for the sustainability of the next generation, and what seems to be the consequences for their actions. It's a failure to be in the land. Only one person in this entire story is born in, lives in, and dies in the land. And even then, Isaac only accomplishes that as the fruition of Abraham's faith. Everybody else, due to a failure to trust their fellow man, ends up outside of Canaan. It's like the land spits them out. So we conclude Genesis, and I've hoped you guys have enjoyed this. From here, our journey should proceed fairly quickly to get to the ultimate point of what my intentions were with this class. Next week, we will read some excerpts from the book of Exodus and various other passages, and might do some minor bits of mapping. But we will no longer be reading every passage as we go. I would encourage all of you to read Exodus on your own time. As for this picture, we're very close to discussing this. We might do so next week even. I'm uncertain yet. It'll depend on how in depth I decide to go into some of the things pertaining to the geography of Egypt. But whether it's next week or the week after, I want you all to think about this. If you were out walking in a field and you dug in the ground and you found this thing in the earth, how would you know what it is? How would you know? How would you know what it is? The answer to that question is, to me, in my opinion, the same answer to if there is any meaningful meaning to derive from the text or from religion at all. And it's the same answer that explains why this always becomes known as something like this. And so I want you all to remember this moment. For months now, I have led you on because I want you to be unsettled, not knowing what this is. I want you to be in turmoil about it. I want you to agonize over the fact that you don't know what it is, and not only do you not know, but you don't have a way of finding out either. And only I have the power to tell you what it is. And this is where this study changes, because that is what almost everything from here on out is going to be about. That's the issue. So we're done for tonight. Sorry if I went long. I really wanted to finish Genesis. So thanks everybody for coming. I hope that this was helpful. So any questions? Anything?
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you.